is Isabella Johnston, and I'm called the Intern Whisperer. My company, Employers for Change, we really like to focus on gratitude. Gratitude towards the people inside of the company and to our customers. We're going to be talking about how gratitude is connected to positive psychology and how that can change your company culture. So today's tip is this whole concept of positive psychology. It's looking at positive emotions, well-being, and factors that contribute to a meaningful life. It has become very, very popular in recent years, especially due to things that we experienced with COVID. The concept has been applied to almost every aspect of life you might think of in your personal life, but it is also super helpful in the workplace. It can reduce stress, it can improve interpersonal relationships, and even reshape your workplace dynamics. So there's a lot of ways that you can utilize this strategy with activities to help engage your people at work. So here are 4 gratitude activities that you can use whether working remotely or at the office. First thing you can do is share with your employees. It's a daily stand-up call. I want you to go and create a gratitude list. You can think of it like maybe it's a journal if they want to do that, but they just need to get a list. And it can be as simple as, what are 3 things that really happened today that was just really, really great? And you want them to share that. You want to share these things at the end of the day. You can also do mindful meditation, taking some quiet time. You want to allow your employees to be able to have some time just to focus on what they are grateful for. And it's a good mental and physical, it really helps with mental and physical health. So when you ask them to create a list, you can tell them that in the morning and then tell them, hey, before we get on the call, think about this, get into this practice of really thinking about what you have that you can be grateful for. Not everything is always, bad. And this activity helps shift the mindset so that they will recognize things that other people have done to help them, other things they have done to help your customers, and just maybe other things that they just had not even thought about. So the third activity is you want to show regular appreciation by expressing gratitude by writing thank you notes or expressions of thankfulness to others. If it's an in the office setting, you could have a gratitude board where people could go and share notes. If it's not in the office, you could have a whole Slack channel that's dedicated to, or whatever channel, whatever device you might use for communication, where people are just saying, okay, it's Gratitude Tuesday. What are you grateful for? And it could be people that you work with. So that fourth activity is, like I mentioned, a gratitude board. You can hang one in your house if you work remotely, in the office, and just have little things up there. It could be a picture, it could be some art, it could be a note, anything that just shows that you are happy and grateful for something in your life, for a person in your life. It can also be for somebody that is in your company. It can be customers. It can be so much that you just never even realized. So spread that concept of gratitude, developing that in the company so that people will really, really engage with one another and stay in a place of mindfulness and positive health. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to being a follower of the Intern Whisperer show. Hi, welcome to the Intern Whisperer. Our show is all about the future of work and innovation, and I want to be able to introduce my guest. I've known her for a little while. Her name is Anna Nadeina. Hopefully I did it right.
Yeah.
Yay, me. To the show. She is the head of growth with SAS Group. She is the host of a podcast called SAS Unbound. She curates a bootstrap track for a German developer conference called Code Talks. That sounds so interesting to me too. Kind of sounds like a TED Talk, but
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
But better.
Yeah. Yeah. What I find really interesting about Anna is that she is a mom. She works remotely, and her biggest fans are her husband and son when she is interviewing guests on her own podcast. So welcome to the show, Anna.
Thank you so much, Isabella. It's great to be here. Yeah, we've known each other for a bit and tried to schedule this for a bit, but
Yeah, finally made it
finally, yeah,
happen.
it's happening.
Yay, yay, and thank you. I know you're in another part of the world and you'll be able to share that with our guests too. Fun fact is that the second most popular country that downloads this episode is the Ukraine. So not really
Okay.
sure why, but people in the Ukraine, it's about closing in on a hefty quarter of the downloads that come from the US. So
Wow.
I only have one person that works on my game team that's from the Ukraine, and I know it's not her, but there's somebody that we have a big following over there. Anyway, so I always kick off the show to tell us about yourself using only 5 words and why those 5 words.
Okay, so I've thought about it long and hard, and first word is probably stubborn. I'm super stubborn, and that, I mean, you have to be kind of, because first of all, I work in a very much male-dominated industry, and you have to get out there and like just, tell people what you want, and sometimes chase them, and sometimes make sure, they remember about you, they remember about what you want and what is behind those wants that you're pursuing. And also because I've been traveling for the past 12 years. I'm originally from Russia, actually Russian Ukrainian, which is a bit of a pickle this past several years. And I've been traveling for 12 years. I've lived in 9 countries, and every country you visit, I've had this conversation just today, how, a lot of people are talking about nomading and how it's, rainbows and unicorns. You just slap a visa into your passport and you go to a different country and you live there, and, you work on the beach and you go surfing, blah, blah, blah. But it's so much work. So just like imagine how much you would be surfing if there was a surfing spot at your hometown. It's going to be the same, only like add on top of it, like where you're going to eat, what hospital you're going to go. If you have kids, you have to figure out everything for them. So you have to be stubborn to keep moving. Probably brave for like the same reason. A lot of things have happened over this past 12 years traveling. Not all were good. And sometimes you have to be really brave to just like go through this. And yeah, I started working in a kind of almost completely new industry for me 2 years ago. So yeah, maybe for that reason too. Another is naive, and I know a lot of people perceive this word as a negative. And yeah, it can be, absolutely. But I like to stay naive, even after all those travels and after, so many people that I've interviewed, and it's way over 100 right now. I think if you want to learn something and if you want to keep pushing and like exploring the world and the industry, you kind of have to be a little bit naive.
It gives you a fresh
Uh,
perspective, right?
right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because you're
Like
seeing it through
otherwise,
somebody else's eyes.
that's true. That's true. Otherwise, you just keep kind of holding it all in the shell, and it doesn't really help. Another one is hardworking. I mean, yeah, like you said, I became a mother 5 years ago. Didn't have a maternity leave. I after 2 weeks, well, 2 weeks, that does it count maybe. After 2 weeks, I went back to work full time. I would have my meeting like this on Zoom, and I would just like put my camera up so that it was only my face, and I would be breastfeeding so that the baby doesn't cry during the call. So like what do you do? Not because I like absolutely had to, but I really loved my job. And I just thought, I just cannot leave it. I want to go back. I want to be there. And when my son was 5 months old, and like we lived in a different country, so we didn't have any help. To this day, we've never had a nanny, to be honest. And yeah, when he was 5, we moved to Peru. which was like different country, different language, and I still kept working. So yeah, it's just, I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it's for everybody. So if you're listening, please don't compare, but it worked for me. It's just who I am. And the last one is probably loving. I'm a very loving creature. Sometimes it's also not so good because you fall in love with people and processes and tools sometimes at work, and sometimes it doesn't work, and it's not very easy to overcome. But again, it's like with being naive, you just, on the podcast with one guest, I really loved his quote. Um, if you don't come from a place of love, but from a place of fear, you cannot expect an abundance from it. So I think that's what I do. Just try to come from a place of love to see how it plays out in the end and hope for the best.
I like that. I think coming from a place of, well, even we'll expand on that word of love. It could be, that you love, you're curious, that you love people, that you give them the benefit of the doubt. It can be so many things when you say, coming from a place of love. Giving grace. Grace is the biggest gift anybody can ever give, because, we're all a mess in this world that we're in, aren't we? So, yeah, I think it's funny. I know I'm bouncing off just a tad bit, but feel free to chime in. I think that people, in their quest for trying to be, say, perfect, what they think is perfect, or the ability to show that they have everything together. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions of being on social content, that people think that, oh, this person has a perfect life, when really, if we showed the messy, the sad, whatever, every aspect of boring parts of a day, then it's more realistic than to think that the carefully crafted Kardashian show is like, it's it's a story, and it's meant to sustain the family and a lifestyle that they want to continue to live in. That isn't necessarily reality.
Yeah.
They work
Yeah. You have to remember that it's a reality show. So like it's still a
supposedly.
show,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, and that's something that I also like very much on the podcast, is when we talk about, the podcast is for the founders and about the founders of SaaS companies. And when we talk, it is often about like the metrics and the success and like how you got there and how many customers you have, and like there is this huge growth that you have right now. But we also try to calm down a little bit and like also talk about the challenges and the mistakes and like what it took and the burnout and the mental load of the founder. And I feel like people just respond to it a lot better right now. And even on the code talks and the conference, where I was curating a track, we had a panel about founder burnout, and it was in the cinema, and it was the largest hall, uh, and it was full. It was absolutely packed. People just wanted to know more, like what you went through and how you overcome this or not. So I think it's really important to just bring the reality to the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that raw side is very comforting. I know when I talk to other founders, I go, God, I just feel like, why am I doing this? I mean, I have a choice, and we can always walk away from it. And it's got nothing to do with feeling like I'd be a failure. I don't at all. But I also think that it's more than that. It's either fulfilling on a purpose or a calling, right? I'm sure that's what many of your guests share, is that they feel like they were called to do something.
Well, it's just, it's something that they've worked so much on. And
Yeah.
it's all of it, it's something that you deeply care about. It's something that you start associating yourself with. And then it's also a pressure from the society and from your peers. You post on LinkedIn that you've had this growth and you've had so many customers, and then all of a sudden you plateau, or like it goes down, or I don't know, you have to sell a company for some reason, because there are those situations too. Like, for example, at SaaS Group, we buy profitable SaaS companies when everything is great and like people just want to walk away to maybe build something else or have more time with their family. But sometimes you have to do it, and like the mental load of just like coming out and saying, oh, maybe I failed, or like I had to sell it because it didn't work. I cannot be associated with it anymore. Like, I'm no longer the guy who founded that company or the guy who like runs this company. So it takes a toll on you. I think it's very difficult when it's everything that your life is, and then at some point you're like, oh, how do I talk about it? How people are going to respond? What if I will never get another gig, or like never raise a fund if I go to investors because I failed? So there are a lot of pressure on founders. So we try to always navigate this, even like during our due diligence process. Like, why are you selling? What's going on? How are you? Like, how can we make it better for you? And this is basically like one of the first questions that we ask.
That's thoughtful. Yeah, because it is wanting to understand the person. And I like that last question is, how can we make it better? Yeah. Because when you make a hard decision, you know that it's impacting not just you, but the employees, the customers, the stakeholders, right? It's the ripple effect. It goes everywhere. So it's a big deal. And it
is
a decision that should never be made lightly.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really thoughtful. So how'd you get started in your career path? Include your school stuff if you want, like where you went to college. Share that you were traveling. I mean, the nomad life is not for everybody. I guess you're homeschooling. I don't know. I have a thousand questions based on just what you shared earlier.
Sure. So no, I wasn't homeschooled. I left my parents' house when I was 16. I was a huge nerd, and I left to go to a boarding school. And it wasn't just like any boarding school. It doesn't really exist in Russia, and that's where I finished high school. That boarding school, so you had to like pass the exams to get there. It was at that time one of the best schools in the country. It was from the state university, so like all the teachers were the university teachers. And when I learned about the school, I was like, oh, I want to be there. So like I said, huge nerd. Books were my favorite friends ever. So I got there and spent 2 wonderful years. Two of my best friends are from that school. So I lived alone since 16. And then somehow, like, just being in that environment, it was a bit more liberating, I would say, than any other schools that I've been to. And the teachers kind of saw that I didn't want to be in Russia anymore. I was like, I don't know. I feel like I don't want to study here. A lot of things are changing, maybe not for the good. And basically, just one of my teachers told me that there will be a Finnish university coming to the city with their exams, and like maybe I want to apply. And that's what I did. And I applied and I went to study in Finland. And super grateful to that university because, again, they were so liberal and so like empowering. And they offered us this amazing programs where you could go second year, sophomore year, you could go to study to one country. I went to the US, to Arkansas, out of all places. Don't ask, but it was a great experience. And then I got my double degree in China. And both of them, again, for whatever reason, you get double degree, you have an opportunity to have 2 different degrees. And somehow I didn't use it. I have 2 diplomas in marketing. And I stayed in China. I loved it. I absolutely love this country to this day. And this is the country where I started what we now call networking. I didn't know that, I was doing that. And basically at one of the parties from the university, because they would throw different kind of parties for us. I don't know, for whatever reason. I think it was like PR. So just to show other kids that they're fun, so they should go there too. And at one of these parties, I met a guy, started talking with him, and I was like, well, my diploma is ready. I will be moving out of the country because I don't have a visa anymore, but I would love to stay. I would love to find a job here, but I have no idea how to do it. And he was like, you know what? Like, I might know somebody who's a head of marketing in this huge consulting company here in Beijing, and I may introduce you. And of course, I went for it. And in 1 week, I got an interview and they hired me, but not in Beijing. They moved me to Guangzhou, which is the south of China. But I stayed there for a year working for the company. And it was very interesting. Like, it was just like kind of dip into very cold water. Like, what's marketing really about? Like, it's not just Excel sheets. It's not just writing for a local newspaper, trying yourself in PR, quote unquote. And, mine, it was 2012, 2013. So like none of the fancy stuff was there yet. And it was really different. I don't think like I fell in love with marketing because it was very, I don't think they knew like where to put me. So we would do some events and we would do some content marketing and we would like redesign the website. So it was like very, very hectic. And I think now when I look at it, it was more like startup-y than it should have been in a company of that size. But then after a year, I left, and after a quick break, again, just through networking, through friends of friends, I got a job in Malaysia. And that was a real startup. That was the place where they allowed me to be remote, and remote being like just living in a different neighborhood, right? Not coming to the office, but still, like, I didn't have to go to the office. That was very new. And also they gave me an opportunity to like really just embrace whatever skills I have, and the creativity, the freedom that they gave me, because it was a company that distributed different kinds of like children and maternity stuff to like supermarkets and other different shops in Malaysia. And they were always like trying to get something more creative, some, products that were still not in the country. And they always wanted to make something. And so the product that we ended up with was lactation cookies, out of all the things in the world. And I was not a mom back then. I was 22, maybe. Yeah, 22, I guess, or 23, something like that. Anyway, and they were like, well, you're into cooking. And that was true. I was into cooking. And you're a marketer. Like, can you just like create a recipe and create a brand and create a packaging, create a logo and everything, and just, go sell it? And I was like, okay, well, that sounds fun. Why not? And yeah, they gave me like the budget and they made me a co-founder, which was also really, really cool. And we ended up making a brand, creating a brand of lactation cookies that later would sell in Malaysia and in Singapore. And if I'm not mistaken, we were on the market for like 4 years, which
Wow.
was, it wasn't a huge success by any means, but we were still on the market. We were like in some of the major supermarkets. It was really cool. But we started in my kitchen. And then we, of course, we outsourced it, and we got all kinds of certifications and stuff, and it got serious. But at first it was just like, bake it, cool it, put it in the bag, slap a logo, and ship it to a mom that found you on Instagram. That was my first kind of, I don't know, sales from social media. So that was a lot of fun. I absolutely loved it. We're still in touch with my former managers. I was in Malaysia just a couple of weeks ago and we met again, and it's incredible. Like, I just love to be in touch with people that I ever worked with. I think, yeah, it's just the power of networking. I'm a huge believer in that. I will probably say that a few more times during the podcast. And then, yeah, like I mentioned, I was into cooking very much. And I decided, you know what, maybe marketing is not for me. So I pivoted, and a year and a half I spent being a chef. And I was a chef at well, I think now it's the best restaurant in Malaysia. I think they just got recognized. And I even worked at, I'm not sure how it's interconnected, to be honest, but at a restaurant in the embassy, in American embassy in Hanoi, Vietnam, which is like super bizarre. But anyway, so I tried that and it was a lot of fun. But then I realized, it's also, first of all, one of the hardest jobs that, you can only do. It's a very sexist environment. It
Mm-hmm.
was absolutely horrible. Like, just the amount of harassment that you have to go through if you're working in the kitchen, if you're a woman, is just unbearable. And yeah, it was fun until it wasn't. And I went back to marketing, and I was super happy to, well, while I was in the kitchen, I was still kind of working a little bit for that Malaysian company. And all of a sudden, I was hired as marketing manager for a dev shop in Russia. Also remote, super fun team. And, but, it was like, it was all new again. Like, I missed almost 2 years. 2 years in marketing is a lot of time. And again, it was very, very much kind of like a starting point for them. They never did much marketing before that. So I had a lot of freedom. We would double down on the content. We would, publish on Hacker Noon. We would do some online events. And then from that, I kind of transitioned into our other company that we were working on and became, well, we called it marketing executive, but it didn't really mean anything, right? Because it was just the only person doing marketing. And again, it was very difficult and very new to me because it was way more technical. That was a low code platform, and that's when we met.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So a low code platform, like, I didn't know what low code was until I became head of marketing in a low code platform. Like, seriously, no idea. I had to learn everything. It was such a steep learning curve. But I'm super grateful for, like, the entire team, the founder. They gave me so much trust to do that. And that's how actually the first podcast that I hosted started. It was called Mars Talks. Mars X is the name of the company. And it was just an experiment for me. Like, I thought, okay, what's everybody doing? Well, like, what could help us build a community? Because we wanted to go through a community of founders, because it's low code. It makes development easier, but doesn't put as many limitations on you. So we thought, okay, it could be very, very good for founders. Like, I'm not a developer, but I want to create my own company. What could help me? I can just, learn a little bit and just wing it solo. And so we went after founders, and I started doing this podcast, and again, just create a ton of content, go to any online event for founders there was, just very actively network. And it started, it started picking up. It opened quite a few doors for us, got us quite a few partnerships. So it was really great. And at some point, because it's so heavy on the IT and it's for developers, and we thought, okay, maybe we have to pivot our strategy a little bit and go after developers and, make their life a little bit easier. And the deeper I was going into it, the more I kind of realized that it's whether, I'm not the right person for the job, or I will have to actually go and actively learn development and coding and, just make sure I understand what I'm talking about. Because like I can, yeah, sure, I can go to a founder and talk about like all the benefits of low code and they will be super excited. I go to a developer and they will ask me like, oh, sure, but like, what is the language? What are the limitations? How do you deploy stuff? And boom, I know nothing, right? And you cannot really fool people who know how it should work and know like what kind of limitations they should avoid when it's low code. So I kind of started to crumble there a little bit.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Yeah, because what you're describing to me is identifying who the buyer persona was. And maybe it's because you didn't, I don't know, I'm making a guess that you didn't do that first, because when you're going to go and try and market or sell to anybody, I have three-sided market: schools, career services, students, all majors, and then I have employers, all sizes. But each one requires I have a different buyer persona, because I don't know how to understand what their pain points are until I talk with them. So you can have hundreds of buyer personas, right? To be able to help, and you put that in the sales playbook and the marketing playbook so that you can reach them better through the content. And I was an English major, okay? None of this did I know until I had my own business and started learning more about marketing. And I'm listening to you and went, wow, you've had such a really exciting life. And I didn't know all of this. And I'm going, wow, you've been able to do so much in such a short span of years of your life, of, everything that's there, and experience things that you went, oh, I love this. Oh, I don't like this. But yet, it always boils down to I think you're getting closer and closer to what you want to specialize in. But I've also, through years of life too, noticed people will do that for about 5 years and then they move to the next thing, because they feel like, oh, I've learned a lot, now I want a new challenge. So you're doing it on warp speed and really figuring it out much faster, which is great. Because when you were talking, I was going, well, before you even told me about the whole chef stuff, I went, I'm sure she has favorite food in other countries. And then you talk about, being a chef. And then when you were also talking about just this experience here of trying to sell to developers, I went, well, that means you have to have buyer personas. So, your depth of knowledge of marketing just continues to get deeper, but also, like broader, right? Anyway, I threw a lot at you. So buyer
No,
personas,
sure.
is that what you learned? That maybe you just needed buyer personas and not have to learn how to code?
Yeah. Well, it was all of it. So basically I was the only person, ever talking to anybody,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we had our amazing developers that were like coding. They were building this stuff, right? And then we would meet once a week and they would talk about like the code.
Mm-hmm.
And well, like who can we sell this to? And we were super early stage, right? Before I joined, there was absolutely nothing. So we just kind of had to figure it out on the go. And we didn't we didn't really think about like how to call it, if it's a buyer persona, or like there was nothing to buy yet. I believe there is still nothing to buy really, like it's free, it's open source. But like how do you make it, how to get it out there, how to bring the brand awareness? So for me, it was still like I cannot sell something that I don't know what it does. I don't believe in like the whole. So I think, okay, this is going to be maybe a little bit controversial if there are any marketers listening to this. So I don't really believe in the whole like sell the benefits stuff or like sell the value stuff. I believe in it in a composition with, show me what I'm getting, but also show me how I'm getting it. Because every time I go now to a website that's usually a SaaS, right? That's the industry I'm at. It's all the same. Like it's the benefits and the values, and we're going to bring you the speed, and we're going to, I don't know, give you the productivity and this and that. And it's just all the same. And I sometimes find myself so deep in the documentation or like in the demo trying to understand how are you actually doing this? Like what are the buttons that I have to push that I don't like it? And I don't think that I can just, wing it with such a complex tool as Mars X is, just selling the benefits. And, developers hate marketers. So you can't really talk to them about that. They know how this stuff should work. So I feel like when you're working with developers, it's just a little bit different. So I feel like, yeah, I still had to up my game. And at the time, I don't know, it was a coincidence that I'm very grateful for. Uh, I reached out to Tobias Schlotke, who is the co-founder of SaaS Group. I didn't know he was a co-founder of SaaS Group because he's also a founder of a dev community called Alpha List, and he has a podcast for CTOs. And I was like, oh, that's a perfect person. Like I could ask him to go on our podcast, and then I could ask him if he would take our CEO, CTO to go on his podcast. And he never replied. And I was like utterly disappointed. I was like, well, that's just rude. And then he reached out, I think 2 weeks later, which now I understand like how busy he is, and that's like a normal time span for him to answer. But back then it was like, oh, interesting. And what he said was like, I checked the podcast and I checked your content. It would be great to have you at Sauce Group. And I was like, okay, thank you, but what the hell is Sauce Group? Like I've never heard of it. And yeah, and we started talking, and the more he kind of talked about it, like that they buy successful SaaS companies, they grow them, they want to become this ultimate independent SaaS platform. The more I liked it, and you know, the less codey, the less nerdy it sounded for me, the more I kind of was like into it. So yeah, and I didn't want to just, leave my team hanging. So I told them I'm going to stay with you like 2.5 more months. Make sure, you're all good. All the podcasts went out. I give all the stuff to another person that you find to replace me. But I'm going to make sure that you guys are okay before I leave. And yeah, and SaaS Group waited, and Mars X gave me an opportunity to finish gracefully. So yeah, that's how that story ended, and I became the head of growth at SaaS Group, and that's what I do right now. And it's a wild ride. It's the best of both worlds. It's like having an opportunity to play with your own brand, because I'm the only marketer basically responsible for SaaS Group brand itself. But it's also like having that umbrella and having the knowledge and expertise from the rest of the team who have years and years on my experience. And they were one of the reasons for me to join. Because yeah, like sure, it's all exciting in you, but you're going to work with people and you have to know who they are. So I really wanted to learn from them. And yeah, so that's what I do right now.
Mm. Well, that sounds like definitely a roller coaster ride. And I loved being on it with you because, as I mentioned earlier, you've had, I'm going to call it a luxury of being able to have a lifestyle that, most people will dream of and say, oh, that sounds so exciting. But, you've done that and you made it work. And I don't know when your son was born in that crazy roller coaster ride too. But, it's really something. And, I was going, but how did she go from where she is to SAS? And did she even know what it was? And you've answered all of those questions that I had. So, it looks like this is what you love doing, is things that are in tech and in STEM, and obviously
Yeah.
that allows you to have this remote opportunity. And you are the poster child, I think, for whatever anybody would say the best of remote work is, because like you're giving way more than required, and even passing up on a maternity leave, that's a big deal.
Thank you. Yeah, it is a big deal. And I mean, looking back, I remember it wasn't, I mean, okay, I'm very lucky. I'm super lucky. 2 weeks into, his life, my son started sleeping through the night. I mean, don't throw anything at me. I know it's it doesn't really happen, but I was super lucky with him. He was such a no fuss baby and still is. But it was hard. It was hard in moving from country to country. From Peru, we went to Colombia, then we went back to Russia. From Russia, we went to Turkey. Now we live in Vietnam. It is a roller coaster, yes, and it's not for everybody. And please don't put me on a poster, because it's not. There is a lot more, oh, like just there is more
Sacrifice.
reality to this
There
show than
is a lot of
anything else.
sacrifice, I can tell.
Yes. Yeah. And also like being in the STEM. Yeah, I love it. I love the tech. I love being in the STEM, but I also like to be probably like just in the middle. I'm not the best marketer. Let's just say that. I completely understand that. And, I have no shame saying that. There's still a lot to learn. I had this gap years that I still have to, bring back. But I'm also not a very technical person. So, but I kind of understand both sides. So I like to be in the middle. And that's why I think I'm pretty good at my job, because I try to tie them together. And like more technical founders, when they talk to me, they find a more like a human side of what they're doing. And then, when we're talking to founders that are not technical, then there is something else that I bring to the table. So yeah, I like to be in the middle. A
Mm,
generalist. They call them generalists now, right?
yeah, yeah. Until we make a change again. Okay, so,
Yeah.
well, who was your favorite podcast guest that you've had, or topic, or it doesn't have to be a person, it can be, what was one of your most favorite things that you did with a guest?
Yeah, okay. So one of my favorite guests was Mike Perm. He's a solo founder of a thing called Sidekick. And don't ask me to explain what it is. It's something to do with Ruby framework, very technical. I was shitting my pants, to be honest,
Hmm.
when I knew he was coming to the podcast. He was introduced to me by a co-founder, and I was like, oh man, like this is, I don't know if I can do this. But I told him that. I was very honest about it. And he made an effort to make it as non-technical as possible. And I made sure to ask just, the questions that would still be very in-depth, very, interesting for other founders. Just not about Ruby, not about the frameworks, not about the like what he's doing with the code, but something for our audience, right? Something for people who also want, as solo founders, to scale to $10 million in annual recurring revenue. So that was one of my favorite podcasts. Another favorite podcast was with Jonathan Bell. He's a founder of License One. teeniest, tiniest tool. I don't think they're still actively on the market. They've been bootstrapping, kind of building in private for 2 or 3 years already. But just the how much restraint they have, how much passion, how much belief they have behind that product and behind that story. I just absolutely loved it. But I mean, honestly, every time you bring a guest, it's different. They all have very different perceptions of the industry and how they're going to succeed or how they succeeded. I love to ask about hacks. And lately the narrative is that, oh, there are no hacks. Like, what are you talking about? Like, if a hack worked in the end, uh, it's just because there was so much hard work before that. So the hack, quote unquote, is do the boring stuff, go out there, grind, make sure you talk to your customers, make sure you do things good. And that's it.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, how many women have you interviewed in this industry versus men?
Oh, that's a good question. Very, very few. And I've been actively trying to look for more. And I've been actively trying to reach out to more. And unfortunately, a lot of female founders just don't respond at all.
I
And
don't
a lot,
I want to
yeah,
give them some grace because you mentioned the other guy didn't get back to you. You've been in a startup. You know how ridiculously hard this is. So I don't think it's that they're not interested. I just think that they're so overwhelmed because I know I am. And this
yeah,
is the
yeah.
only time when I have a guest on my show, the only time I have any in-depth conversation for 1 hour with a person. And so they may feel that they would love to do it, but they can't do it.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, a lot of female founders replied and said, you know what, like, I just don't have time because there is this business and then I have kids and then I have, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm so many things and I just don't have the time for that, maybe next year. And I reach out next year and I'll make sure, I'll reach out again.
Mm-hmm.
But also it's just the fact that there are so few of them and like
Yeah.
the target audience that we're working with is not that huge. So out of that not so huge target audience, to find so few female founders
Mm-hmm.
who are willing to talk to you, it's really a challenge. So yeah, I know what you mean. Bring more, and yeah, I'm trying. Believe me, I'm trying.
Yeah. You should probably look at Andrew's show that I had mentioned to you earlier because he'll always have a lot of guests on there. But, female founders, I know I'm sure you know where to go. So there's female founders, there's, all of the other female groups that you could potentially grab some, FaceTime with, but
Mhm.
that's where it is. So we are actually more than halfway through the show. So we're going to take a moment and acknowledge our sponsor, Cat 5 Studios, and we'll be right back.
The Intern Whisperer is brought to you by Cat 5 Studios, who help you create games and videos for your training and marketing needs that are out of this world. Visit Cat 5 Studios for more information to learn how Cat 5 Studios can help your business. Thank you, Cat 5 Studios.
Okay, so we're going to do lightning rounds, okay, of questions.
Okay.
All right. What are you reading right now?
American Gods, believe it or not, I've been postponing reading that book for over 10 years for some reason. And yeah, last week I got it finally, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to read it. So I'm reading it now.
What's it about?
Good question. Life, weird, bizarre things in life, and it's all intertwined with like fantasy, and I still have to figure it out,
Is it Neil
maybe, I don't know,
Gaiman? Is that the author?
Neil Gaiman. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Yeah.
British. Okay, got it. I'm grabbing that piece of information also. All right. Well, I'm going to go look for it for sure. So I won't hold you to it. Hardest lesson that you learned that changed your life?
Hardest lesson is probably that you know, we cannot do everything and anything that we want. Like that's what I've been taught when I was little. And when I grew up, I was like, well, that's not true, right? You just have to really be stubborn and, and go after it. And if you really, really want it, you can actually find a way to do it. Like, I don't know, the simplest thing, my mom would always tell me, if you get a tattoo or you get a piercing, you will never get a job at a respectable company. And well, what do you know? I have many tattoos and I pierced my nose, well, only when I was 30, because, well, I felt guilty that my mom is going to not be so happy about it. But yeah, it's just get out of that shell. Don't listen to people, especially don't listen to people who are not living the life you want to live. And it's as easy as that. And yeah, just try.
Yeah. And we always have to remember that our parents, they love us intensely, but they're also from a different generation. And so the social norms are not the same as, and the definitions of what a respectable job is very different now too. So with all due respect to your mom, times have changed. So
yeah, that's true.
So more liberties are provided, and especially when you work remote, who honestly cares?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're covered up, so I don't see your tattoos, so it's all good. What are you most grateful for?
I'm most grateful for the support that I'm getting on all fronts. I mean, like you said, I get a lot of support from my family internally, from my son, from my husband. I mean, my son, I once caught caught my son on the plane listening to one of my podcasts, and he's 5, and I don't even know like
That's
how
crazy.
he found it on Spotify. But he was like, "Mommy, you're talking to this guy Ryan," and I'm like, "That's Ryan Singer, the author of Shape Up." And he was like, "Yeah, I like it." So yeah, I really love their support from my family, from my mom and my dad. We do have our differences. Oh my God, just like any other, family, and I'm the only child. And, for them, me being so far away, not the easiest thing, but I love the way they always say, hey, no matter what, we're there for every decision you make. Yeah, they will probably, tell me if they're not very happy about it, or like they don't support the idea of it. But when I'm making it happen, they're like, okay, we're there for you. Of course, the support from my friends, and I mean, with my lifestyle, I haven't seen some of them for years and years, but we still talk. And yeah, they're super supportive. I know everything that's going on with them. They know the same about me. And of course, from my colleagues. I mean, honestly, every company, I feel like they tend to call themselves your family, right? We say South Group family. And at first it was like, not that again. But it feels like a family. And I mean, we had our retreat where the family grew to like 170 people, I guess, right? But it felt absolutely great. Like, yeah, you have the freedom, you have the support, you have the knowledge, you have the expertise, you're free to make mistakes, you're free to fix them. Yeah, it's just great. Having the support and being able to be with my kind of people is great.
That's really beautiful. What do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for the way I made people feel. And that's kind of, well, now it's kind of part of the job, right? I go to a podcast and make sure people open up. They tell me about their story. They tell me about their journey, how they grow their company, how they grow their team. I go to events, and also I try to make sure people are at ease. I mean, they're selling their companies to us, they're babies. Some people call them their babies, right? And it's not easy, right? And you want to make sure people are as comfortable as possible. And I'm kind of trying to bring that from my life outside of the company, because again, you travel, you want to be very supportive and very curious about people's lives. Like, for example, in Vietnam, people are incredible. Like, the country, it has its ups and downs, but people are absolutely incredible, so kind, and you want to give back. And every country kind of teaches you that, you have to be open for communication, for connection, for a deep connection. And I've learned that over the past 12 years. And I'm happy to bring it to every environment where I go. So hopefully I'm doing a good job.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. You're not all knowing and God and somebody that can go, oh, yes, I understand everything. So, we work within the life knowledge that we have, and then the observations that we make about what's going on around you. So, yeah, you're doing great. So, what do you think 2030 is going to look like?
I'm going to tell you like how I hope it's not going to look like.
Okay.
And I hope we're not going to lose the human connection, because ChatGPT is great. What Meta is doing is great. Like, virtual reality is all fun. It's all very exciting. But I kind of like the trend this year where, everyone says it's back to customer communication. It's back to building trust. It's back to real talk. It's back to, establishing credibility, because people were so tired of only remote and only talking to a person on the screen, that they want to get back there. They want to feel the real touch. And I kind of hope that 2030 is still going to be about the real human connection, about the real human touch. Because, yeah, I mean, sure, even me, I benefit from remote work immensely. It has changed my life. But the times when we get there, we get to see the people behind the screen, it's the best.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you've said some keywords, things that I also have said. We need to get from behind this, get in front of the screen, talking to people, so that it's not the screen anymore that's the barrier. Because, you can't move around much, right? You have to stay seated. I mean, you could, if you're wearing headphones that are wireless and everything, you could walk around, but that's not still the same as being in a room with a person, because it's very experiential, right? You've got to be able to see them. Sure, turn your camera on, but you can't touch them. You can't smell, oh, gee, what's that perfume you're wearing? Or what'd you just put on your hair, or something like that, right? So there's other senses that are involved when we are in person, and virtual reality is not going to be the thing that takes us to that place of, like what you said,
I
real.
mean, hopefully, like, virtual reality will be able to help people that cannot otherwise experience something.
Yeah, like the ability to walk, right?
Right. Yeah, like people who have some disabilities. I mean, sure, I think it would be incredible to just give them, the sense of how it would even look like. I mean, there are certain things that I hope virtual reality is going to help with, but I hope it's not going to take away, what we just started to feel grateful for after 2 years of COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally agree. I like your take on it, because I also feel that it has to be that it's human centric, and that we absolutely have to remember humans first, and then how does AI or virtual reality or whatever we pick, augmented reality, how does that play into keeping what's supposed to be human stay human? Yeah.
Mm.
Well, we talked quite a bit about remote work with, your first part of the story, but let's go a little bit more into AI. What do you think do you use Chat GPT?
Sure.
Right? And
Everyone
so,
does.
yeah, well, maybe not everyone, I don't think yet. There's still people that are super afraid of it. But I
Yeah.
feel that Chat GPT is nothing more than Google on speed, whatever,
Yeah.
because way back, people would just tell stories, and then they started writing, like in cave. Well, caves were first, writing in caves, and then it was telling stories, maybe at the same time. And then, you fast forward and you get into, oh, there's a printing press, and then you fast forward again, and there's automations and being able to roll out books in masses, right? And then there's TV, well, there's radio, and then there's TV, and then there's libraries, and all of this is taking knowledge in a bigger scale. So it's the same thing. It's doing a Google search, but it's all of the information, good and bad, and
Yeah.
then Chat gathers it together and says, here you go. And so it's not true, just because it's on the internet doesn't mean everything is true. And just
Yeah.
because Chat gives you stuff doesn't mean that it's all accurate. So I feel like, yeah, it's a tool. It's nothing to be afraid of, but we do need to make sure we're setting up better understandings of how to use it. And
Yeah.
I always think there's going to be a fact checker,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
Somebody's going to have to verify, oh, where's the sources? How do we know this
Yeah.
is really accurate? So what are your thoughts about AI in whatever way that you want to define that?
Sure. So I'm just, let's just go with ChatGPT. I use it and I think it's a great tool. I use it mostly like for brainstorming, like, I don't know, when we were trying to find a name for the podcast, we used it and it didn't help really, but it kind of, started the brain thinking in a bit of a different direction. So what else? Like when I have, English is not my first language, right?
You're really
So
good.
thank
Just so you know.
you.
Yeah. I
Thanks.
wouldn't know that.
But still, like when you're working on a content, you still want to be perfect, right? But at least like grammatically correct. Then I would put it into ChatGPT and just say, you know what, I probably made some mistakes. Can you do it for me? But you're absolutely right. I think you have to do some fact checks because like when I'm working on something that I'm not really familiar with, and I'm asking like, can you offer me this piece of information or this or that? If I don't like, I cannot trust it, right? It pulled some information from the internet, whether it's true or maybe it was like in someone's blog that was just, a joke, whatever. So what I would do is I put that into Google and I would say, like, tell me more, right? And then I would Google it and do a research. So I think until we know exactly like what the sources are, we should do fact checks and we should do a bit more research. Like ChatGPT and any other AI is a great way to kind of, get back a bit of that time for like more mundane tasks. But when you're talking about in-depth quality work, well, do in-depth quality work. You still have to be an editor there. It's just, think about it as very early stage, like knowing nothing intern that would just pull random information in for you, right? Without even thinking, without any background check. And you were an editor at a respected source. So, check
I
it,
ask it to
edit
give
it.
me citations. When I
Mm.
write it, I say, okay, I want you to write a 5-paragraph, because I test it in different ways. Write me a 5-paragraph essay that's on the readability scale of a 10th grader, because I taught, 7th and 10th grade, and most content that's out there is written on a 10th grade reading level, except for the Wall Street Journal, 11th grade. So And then I said include citations and include this, like I'll put my name in there and say, and add, I use the ampersand sign, and include this person's, a quote from this person that's related to, these 3 points. And many times I try to break it because I want to see like how many parameters can I give it before it goes, oh, I don't know. And so, it's kind of fun, not going to lie, but it's also something so I can test the boundaries and see the citations are there. I have to ask for it to give it to me in either MLA or APA. So it sounds more academic, and it can do that. It can write like a 5-year-old if you ask it. So take something complex and throw that in there and say, okay, now explain it like you would to a 5-year-old. Very interesting responses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, definitely nothing to be afraid of, but if you're planning to do some actual work with it, then just be prepared for editing.
Yeah, totally agree. Let's see. Do you have any thoughts about how it might be used negatively in the world?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, like any media, right? It can be used in very wrong ways to influence people who are, well, not ready to do the editing, right? And not ready to go and fact check. And, but it's like with anything. It's like with scraping, all right? Scraping the web. If you're using it unethically or planning to do so, yeah, it's an unethical tool, right? But if you're planning to use it differently, right? It can be both. It's still just a machine. It's just still just a tool.
Cool. Yeah.
So it really depends on you.
Yeah. When it came out at the end of last year, now I'm in ed tech and future of work. And so there was a lot of products that were out there, and in the education industry, the teachers were talking, well, how are we going to use this? Because we need to make sure that it's really the student writing this. And they will give a topic, and students would go and use chat. And 3 out of the 20 students had the same response. And it wasn't that they cheated off of each other, that they just copied and pasted the question in and it came back the same. So there's these places where it can be used. I don't want to say, well, maybe negatively, because I kind of wonder if kids in school now will understand the value of research or become too reliant upon chat. And instead, they won't question things. They won't think for themselves. That's where I get concerns, is like, does it make it so that we become, the masses might become more of sheep and just follow things instead of seeing their potential? So those are the things that I always wonder about. And I feel like, all of that can be managed, and it's everybody needs to throw out like, well, this could possibly happen. This could be good and this could be bad. And there's some guardrails that are going up around those things, like World Economic Forum is talking about having governance around it. And I think that would be a good thing too, because you always want to know what the boundaries are, right? You at 16 leaving to go to boarding school, and it's like, oh my God. And I did not know you were the only child too. So there's like all of these things. And I went, wow, your parents were going, yeah, we're going to let you leave. That's really brave on their part. Right. But obviously they did a good job because, you're engaged with them and all of those good things. So anyway, the point being, getting back to the whole chat thing, is that we do need to always know what the boundaries are to be respectful. And
that's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here we are. We're at the end of the show. What is the best mentoring advice that you want to share with our listeners?
So the best mentoring advice is to get out there. Like I said, I'm a big believer in the power of networking, and get out there, go network, go listen to people, go talk to people, go figure out how you can be helpful, and only then ask them if they can help you. So There's, offer value first and then ask for something. But yeah, just don't be afraid to talk to people. It's really fascinating how you can change your life if you're going out there curious and brave and just ready to take no for an answer.
That is lovely. I just love that part. Yeah, be brave. It's always important to be brave because honestly, people are not that obsessed with each other. We think they are. We think that they're going, oh my God, they saw me do this, or oh no, what are they going to think? It's like they really don't care.
No one cares. No.
They aren't going to care from 5 years from now, for sure. And they'll probably forget like the next day too. So it's like, who cares? How can our listeners contact you? Website, social channels, anything?
Yeah, the best way to find me is probably LinkedIn. So it's Anna Nadeina, Nadeina. And yeah, otherwise, just find sales.group and I'm somewhere there.
Got it. That sounds wonderful. Well, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. And your show will be airing this year. Just so you know, it's going to be the December 19th. So you'll be getting a link to your show and some snippets, and you can promote it. And we do this little contest where whoever gets the most downloads by the end of the year, they can come back on the show again next year and talk about, well, where are they now? You could be in a completely different country. You could honestly be in a completely different job. You could be doing anything. I don't know what. You're the epitome of Remote Year, which is a company I really wanted to work for, honestly.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that?
Nope.
You live a month of a different country every month, and they, it's all around the world, and you're working remotely. So it's like you could do anything you wanted, honestly. And if you work for them, then they pay you and you're traveling. Like, yeah.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. So go look at that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting.
I'm pretty happy. So maybe next year.
Yeah. But you could also just do it, where you're just different. You're in Vietnam right now, but you might be, I don't know, in Indonesia, in another country. And then you could be in, wherever, who knows, the polar regions of the world. I would not, but maybe somebody would.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, but thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Oh my goodness. It is my pleasure. Thank you, Anna. It's really nice being able to have this in-depth conversation.
Yeah, same here. Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you to our sponsor, Cat 5 Studios, and thank you to our video production team, Gabe Laporte, Tommy Myers, Andrew Pagat, and Julissa Hurtado. Music is by Charles Lawrence. Visit Employers for Change at www.e4c.tech to learn how you can create real diversity and inclusive culture while skilling your people for the future of work. We want to thank you for supporting the intro by subscribing to us on Podbean, our Employers for Change YouTube channel, or streaming from your favorite podcast channel.